guys, it's Megan. Welcome back to my channel. My husband Jason is joining me.
Hello.
And we just wanted to bring some awareness about Down syndrome. If you don't know anything, I feel like we heard so many conflicting things when we first found out and got the diagnosis. So we just wanted to kind of set the record straight for you, just to educate for our people with Down syndrome. They're people just like us, and they deserve that respect as well.
Yes, because like our daughter, when she was born unexpectedly with Down syndrome, so we actually learned a lot right off the bat. We had a lot of questions that we needed answered, and just through the experience, we've kind of heard some of the common myths along the way.
What I want to start out with is probably the second most annoying thing to me when it comes to Down syndrome. My daughter does not have Downs. My daughter does not have the Down syndrome. My daughter is not Down syndrome, and she's certainly not Down syndromed with an ED. She has Down syndrome.
And the history of that, of course, a quick Google, is the doctor who first diagnosed an extra chromosome, trisomy 21. His last name was Down, so it was attributed to Down's syndrome. So it doesn't have really anything to do with other than the doctor's last name that first diagnosed the chromosomal extra chromosome.
And I will correct you, just like if you mess our name up, mess my name, call her Leela May or Lola Lily. If you say Downs or Down syndromed, no. Or if you say the Down syndromed little girl, no. You always put the person first. So if you refer to someone with Down syndrome, you would say Lila May, a little girl who has Down syndrome or has Down syndrome. You would not say the
just like, and then, just to think of it, if there happened to be a person with, something, God forbid a child had cancer or something, you don't just say, oh, he's the, there's the cancer baby, or there's the you would say, oh, there's that child with cancer.
What is something that you feel is like a total myth about people with Down syndrome? Like, what's like your number one most annoying thing besides the R word? Because we're gonna do a whole video on the R word.
Sure. Well, probably, one myth, or at least something that a lot of people are ignorant about, or they just don't know of, is when they learn that our child has Down syndrome, a lot of times they'll ask me, is that something on your wife's side of the family, on your side of the family? Like, is that something genetic that maybe and honestly, before we had her, maybe I wouldn't have known that answer either, but to learn that it's a chromosomal, from the very first start, when those first two cells separated, they had an extra 21st chromosome. Now there are a small percentage of people that do have a genetic, I believe a predisposition is what they call it to it. My wife and I went through genetic counseling and testing after Lila May was born, and we don't have that, so it just happened to be the random 1 out of approximately 1,000 chance at the time that it was born. But it'll be funny, we'll get a lot of questions when people are like, oh, or is it something she grows out of, or it's not a disease or a condition. It's like, no, she'll have that her whole life.
It's a genetic condition.
Every cell in her body has a third copy of her 21st chromosome. So
she's not ill. She's not suffering from a disease. Just as easily as you have blonde hair or black hair or green eyes or brown eyes, she has an extra copy of her 21st chromosome. It's as simple as that.
When Lila May was born, a lot of people told us that she would be the happiest kid, happiest person in the world, and that's just not true. She has fits. She's just like every other typical person out there. She's not happy 100% of the time.
No, she's the sassiest kid I've ever met. She's the bossiest kid I've ever met, and hands down the most stubborn. You have to take into account that people with Down syndrome are extremely stubborn. It's their way constantly, and they don't like change. So if you disrupt their situation, you're going to have an epic meltdown.
That's for sure.
And also, because of the fact there's so much frustration because they reach their milestones, so depending, some later than others, but definitely they're delayed compared to typical children. It's extremely frustrating. It's very frustrating for Lila May to want to run to keep up with the other kids, and she can't. So she doesn't know how to express herself. She has a meltdown.
As Lila May started to grow, I would always be surprised when people would say, "Oh my gosh, she looks just like her mom. Oh my gosh, this feature looks just like yours." And I would always think like, "Well, who is she supposed to look like?" And so it's one of those common misconceptions that people think that everybody with Down syndrome has identical physical features, but it's like, no, they look more like their parents, their family, than they do just all people with Down syndrome having a certain identical look.
It makes us feel kind of like I gave birth to an alien. Like, oh, here's this kid. Like, it's not going to look like you because it has these it has these characteristics of Down syndrome, which is totally normal. But guess what? She's still going to have my forehead and my nose and my cheeks and my face shape. And that doesn't change. People with Down syndrome still look like their family. They don't look like the people down the street or people in other countries or aliens. They look like their family.
So Lila Mae is awesome. We love her. Yes, it was shocking when she was first born, but we quickly learned that, we didn't want people to say, oh, we just had a baby and, by the way, the baby was born with Down syndrome. That all of a sudden a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry. I mean, because she's awesome. She's our kid, and especially now we don't even think about it. Like it, I understand in the beginning when people first heard, but we kind of look past the Down. Like, right, she's our daughter. She's Lila Mae. Like the Down syndrome has taken a very far back seat to who she is as an individual. But just every once in a while you'll still get that if you meet somebody for the first time and you start having the conversation to tell them about your family and your child. And my daughter happens to have Down syndrome. It's like, hey, try not to react negatively to that. She's an awesome human being, just like every other kid.
Yeah, we don't need to hear like, I'm so sorry, your life must be so challenging. Like, our life is so challenging, but we know that because we live it every day. When we're meeting someone or talking to someone, we don't need to focus on that. It's like, oh, your kid acts just like my kid. Oh, your kid's pulling my kid's hair. Your kid is fighting over the paintbrush. Like, those things happen in our life too. It's just that her motor skills and her speech is delayed. My daughter is 5.5 years old, and unfortunately, we have people in our life that continually talk to us about Down syndrome. I want to make this clear because it's something I'm very sensitive on. We're not in denial that our daughter has Down syndrome. We live it all day, every day of our life. All the therapies, all the appointments, all the meltdowns, all the IEP meetings. I don't need you to just say, I don't even remember that she has Down syndrome. Oh my gosh, she doesn't even look like she has Down syndrome. Like, she's 5.5. Like, do not label people and put them in a box. Do not make Down syndrome or any type of special need or disability all that person is, because she's so much more. As a matter of fact, besides maybe doctor's appointments in school, talking about specific milestones or situations, we don't ever really use the term Down syndrome, not because we're in denial, but just because of the fact that Lila Mae is Lila Mae. Like, she's not defined by her diagnosis. And the other thing is like, on a little lighthearted note, she has several medical situations, and we were at the hospital. We had to go to the emergency room, and they're asking me, like, okay, what does she have going on? But we've been to this hospital a million times. You'd think they know. So I was a little like, okay, she has OSA, she has CSA, she has laryngomalacia, she has Nissen, she has GERD. I'm listing all this stuff, and I finished with what I was saying, and I gave them all of her medical information, and the man that was doing the procedure, the physician, said, I hate to ask, I feel very awkward right now, but does your daughter have trisomy 21? Oh my gosh, yes, that should have been what I led with, but that's just an example of it not defining our life, and we don't revolve anything of our life around it whatsoever.
And on a sad note, in our world today, and I think in the United States it's over 90%, I think 91% of people, when they're given a Down syndrome diagnosis prenatally, they will abort their child. Some countries, I think it's as high as 100%. now that our daughter is 5 years old, and we kind of already commented that Down syndrome takes a pretty far back seat to who she is, like to who Lila Mae is. Like sometimes we even forget, that she has it because she's a person. So it's sad to know that 9 out of 10 or more of babies that are diagnosed with Down syndrome are aborted.
And a lot of the times it's a false positive. A lot of times with genetic, I don't know the percentage, but it's actually very high percentage that you get a false positive of trisomy 21, and then these people are having abortions, and it's genocide, in my opinion. You're trying to eradicate a group of people. Like Iceland, they're like eradicating Down syndrome. It's a total genocide, and I have strong feelings on that. If you disagree, that's fine. I'm not afraid to say how I feel. I just feel like God gave you this human being for a reason. Like, how dare you say because their life is going to be a little more challenging, or it's going to keep you a little more busy. How dare you?
And to think and
be selective with birth.
Right. And because it's our daughter and knowing like how awesome she is, it's crazy to me to think that if somebody met her, they could look at her and look at another 5-year-old and say, oh, that would be the child I want versus that, or all that, she must have a lot of extra work and I'm just not prepared to handle that. So it's just crazy to think that people make that decision without maybe talking to, some families that have gone through that experience and said, oh my gosh, like we wouldn't trade her or him for the world, because we wouldn't. One
of the last facts that we are going to share in this video is crazy statistically divorce rate, which we all know how horrific that is. Well, did you know that people who have a child born with any type of special need have like an 86% divorce rate?
So almost 9 out of 10 couples don't make it, and that's unfortunate too, because we feel like going through the experience with Lila Mae has made us much closer as a family, and brought us together. And I guess some people have to experience a little bit more of a challenge and decide that they would rather make a decision to walk away from that, or maybe choose a different life because it's overwhelming, or maybe just the stress compounds and people have underlying issues or whatever it is. But when we heard that stat, we immediately are like, oh my gosh, like we're going to do everything we can to, we want to keep our family together. And again, it's made us much closer and made our relationship and made our family much stronger. So, but knowing that stat and realizing that any marriage without kids and then adding kids and then adding a kid with special needs, it all requires work. So hopefully you guys learned at least a couple things, and feel free, anything you're genuinely curious about, she'll be able to answer it. So I appreciate you guys offering a ton of support. I know she talks about it a lot, and we're here to advocate on behalf of our daughter and on behalf of people with Down syndrome. So if there's any information you want to get firsthand from a family that has a child with special needs with Down syndrome, we're here to answer that for you.
And we will see you guys in our next video.
See ya.
Thanks for watching. Bye.